Hi, I'm Donna Weaver McGinty. This is my son, Tim Weaver. We're glad to be with you today to give you a little insight into what it was like for one family who lost a loved one in the bombing of Oklahoma City on April 19th, 1995. Really, it was, as the museum says, like a day like any other day. At our house, Dad took the boys to school, and I went to work early. My older son, Jeff, was a sophomore. He was 16, just turned 16 a few weeks earlier. And Tim was in 6th grade. He was 12. So Mike had taken the car to Goodyear for service, and I was in a meeting with coworkers in my office when the explosion happened. Of course, my building was about 2 blocks north of the Murrah building, and we felt it and heard it, but we didn't know what it was. At that time, we had not had explosions and bombs going off in America very often, and we did not think about that. We thought of an earthquake. We thought of an explosion at the newspaper office, which would have chemicals, but not a truck bomb. Where were you, Tim?
I was, like Mom said, I was in 6th grade, 12 years old. Dad had dropped me off to school that day, and I was in my 2nd hour reading class in 6th grade, Mrs. Oldcrow at Sequoia Middle School in Edmond. Right as class was about to start, we heard like a not too distant thunder. There was some question if it was an air conditioning unit or it wasn't supposed to rain today. There were no windows in the classroom. And so we went around about the day, or at least that class, like normal. My path from 2nd period to 3rd period took me by the principal's offices, and I could see 5 to 8 people huddled around TVs watching something. I don't remember particularly knowing what it was. And then the morning went on to lunch, and we heard, as rumors happen, of other kids that have been pulled out of school, worried about their parents downtown. And then after lunch, I was called to the office, and there was my mom, and said that it was Dad's building. Mm-hmm. And we went home from there.
Yeah. There was damage in the building I worked in, and everyone was evacuated. Cell phones were rare. No students had cell phones, but they did have TVs at school. I had recently gotten a cell phone, but they didn't work well downtown that day. There was not enough capacity. But I was close enough to walk down to the site at the time when debris was still falling out of the sky.
The explosion took away what appears to be nearly 1/3 of the building.
But pretty quickly, I went back to my office, and we were able to collect things and then told to go home. I made a quick call to both of the schools. My son Jeff was in high school at Edmond North, and I wanted him to know that I was okay and that I would come get them. By the time I got home, my church support was there. I had called the church because my minister was involved in disaster recovery, disaster help, and I wanted him to know. Because the big issue for us was an unknown. We did not have information. We did not know what had happened. We did not know where Mike was. He had taken car for service. I was hoping he was late to work, but by then I knew that he wasn't. And that's when support from around us started coming in. Of course, family came in. The neighbors opened their doors and housed part of our family. I had picked up the guys at school. At the end of school, here comes their teachers just to check on us, see what was going on, and see what we needed. The support was amazing, and it's one of the things that I hope that you learn about this event is that we should be proud of our community and of our state and the support and the response that they gave everyone, but they gave it to individual families. The boys were out of school for a couple of weeks, but the schools ended up giving them a lot of grace on their grades, because one of the effects of it was, I guess part of the shock of it all is that your thinking really was foggy. You had a hard time concentrating. I had a hard time going back to work. Did you notice any of that?
Yeah, I mean, those early days were kind of a blur. Lots of people in the house, a fridge full of food. I think that was a good distraction. Looking back, being 12 and not really fully, I don't think really fully understanding what was going on. But I knew something bad was going on. And then it sunk in for me gradually through the next months to even years of what happened. And I think looking back, that kind of support, it doesn't mean that you have to do anything in particular. It just means enough to be there and to be a distraction and not have the room be quiet. At least there to have normal conversations.
Yeah, your sports team, he was playing at the time, team members showed up and just hung out.
Yeah, just hung out. And I just remember playing, and that might be part of the reason why it all seemed kind of not as big of a deal as it was at that time, or at least my memory of it. But having that distraction for me, it was sports, it was school, it was other activities, it was having people there just to be there. I think looking back played a big role.
Mm-hmm. So we each had different things that helped us. My older son Jeff, talking it out, usually late at night, helped him and his friends, similar to you. He was much better when school started again and when he was surrounded by his friends, his church group. For me, prayer was really important in my church. My church support, they sent some lay ministers to be with me, to walk with us, to pray as a family, to pray at the beginning of the day. They hung with me those first few days. So I think that really was what helped us make it through.
And for me, the hardest times were when Dad was there. So that was the beginning of the day and the end of the day. So mornings were harder. I'd be more upset, kind of more on edge. And I think at that point, talking was part of how I dealt with what was going on. And then during the day, it was distraction with the everyday life of being in middle school, then high school, activities and sports and classes. But that's kind of how grief can show itself. It can show itself in many different ways for many different people. It can be out of nowhere getting upset and you don't quite understand why, but that's normal. And just realize that that you're going through a lot. And sometimes things happen that don't make sense, but that can be normal.
Right. And we did do counseling. Counselors helped me understand relatively that everybody was going through this. That always seems to help. And to understand that this was going to take a while. It's going to take a long time, much longer than I think I was aware of. Toward the end of the second year, I felt like I turned a corner and felt much better. But different people handle it different ways. And then things sneak up. The graduation happens and it brings back a memory that is painful. But there's so much more that are good memories and make you laugh. And thankfully for us, Mike was really, really funny. Mike was the humor in our family. He was the fun. I was administration and he was fun. So I've had to learn to be a little more fun. And they've learned how to be a little more administrative, which was good. But Mike was friendly. That's what people have told us about him throughout among his coworkers, that he was friendly and that he would know when any food was in the building. When they'd had a birthday on the 6th floor or the 2nd floor, he would somehow show up for food.
Yeah, he was the joke around the table, spoons on noses, making mom roll her eyes around the dinner table every night. But he's also dedicated to us. Looking back, the amount of hours that he spent with us on the baseball field or the basketball court or the soccer field adds up. And that was his priority. It was selfless, is what it was. And in retrospect, he spent his time where he valued.
That's right. Yes, he coached both the boys, and youth sports was important, and it was a legacy from his family. So he did coach. We moved different places, and the boys would sign up for a team, and there'd be no coach. So Mike would volunteer, but he enjoyed it. He did love it, and he made his first things first. He loved golf, but he was at sporting events first.
And his saying was always to put a smile on your face and a song in your heart. That's what he'd always tell us when we were being
pouty.
Pouty. That's a good word for it. Yeah.
That's right. We have good memories. We have many more good memories than bad. So one thing we wanted you to know is that from our experience, I hope you can pick out some things that will be helpful to you if you find yourself in a crisis. Things happen, whether we want them to or not. And
if you have a friend or classmate that's going through a difficult time in their life, you don't have to try to fix it. You don't have to have the right words. Sometimes just being there and doing normal things helps to deal with what they're going through. And at times, if they want to share with you what's going on, just listening is all that they really need. And sometimes it just helps to talk about it. But other times it's good to have distraction.
It takes it all.
And for me, it was also gathering up pictures and putting them in albums, and that was, I think, cathartic to me and something that I've looked back at through the decades since '95, and I'm so thankful I did that. I kept a letter that he wrote me from camp. I kept pictures and mementos and team pictures and newspaper articles we would talk about, and I'm really glad I did.
Mm-hmm. And we got better as time went on and the years went on, and we functioned. We did fine.
Yep.
Graduations happened. We went to college. Graduations and families and new loves and new grandchildren, and it's all there's hope. You do recover from such horrific things.